We're in Romans chapter 5, verse 2, going through verse 6 today. And before I start reading it, I want to tell you that it talks about running into. Like as I start reading it, you're going to hear this running into phrase. It says, as we run into calamity and difficulty, as we run into. So that phrase just really kind of caught me as I was studying this. And I thought, man, when I think of running into something, like if I'm going to run into something, usually in my mind, there are only two different kinds of running into something. The first one might be like this. You can see some things on the screen. Like you might run into somebody, while you're playing. I wasn't watching this game. I stole that image off of Getty Images. But then this next one, I was actually watching like, bow, I love that. That's running into the wall right there. That's when somebody's so focused on catching the ball that now, it might be the third one would be a different kind of running into. This one would be if you're running into something to save someone, like a lifeguard running into the ocean to try and help someone, or maybe a military member, a serviceman running into battle. You might even see like an EMT or a paramedic running into an accident to try to capture someone who's hurting and help them. We also have seen images, of course, of firemen running into a building to save someone who needs. Like these are all kinds of running into kinds of things. Now, so three quick things that when you say running into, like automatically in my mind go there. It's either going to be something that's embarrassing, like like the Garth Brooks song where he runs into his ex-girlfriend, from high school. Like he's going, oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. You run into something you didn't want to. Or like when I was in high school, I was at an event on Easter. I was at a church service, and my mom asked me to run outside and get something out of the car, and I ran as hard as I could directly into a solid plate glass window with like 40 people watching. And I didn't have the luxury of the thing shattering and me getting to go through it, because in that case, at least I would have gotten people's sympathy. No, the thing I ran into bounced. So I just went, ba-dong, and it knocked me back on the floor, cold out flat. Done. Running into something. Another thing is if you hear running into, you think emergency. Like you're running into a burning building, you're running into something else. These are the kinds of images or feelings or emotions that come to my mind when I think about running into something, like genuinely running. And in some way, that is the way that this verse uses this phrase, running into, but in a different context. I want to read to you Romans 5, verse 2. This is a very meaningful passage to me, maybe one of my most read scripture verses there is. I've gone back to this passage over and over and over in my life. I hope that I can do it justice today in teaching it to you. Romans 5:2 says, because of our faith, Christ has brought us into this place of undeserved privilege, where we now stand, and we confidently and joyfully look forward to the sharing of God's glory. Before we go to the next slide, like that's a good verse, isn't it? That's a good verse. Like now I'm going to warn you, it doesn't stay here, okay? But right now, we've got undeserved privilege. We are standing with confidence and joy. That's a good verse. I like it would be nice if the whole New Testament were that. Like that's it, okay? We're going to be given a great big gift from God. It's going to make us stand up with confidence and joy. Done. Finished. It's over. That's it. And I think a lot of people actually think that's what Christianity is. That is what it is. They haven't read the whole New Testament, so they don't see the next verse, and they just think that's what it means to follow Christ. Undeserved privilege, always standing, always confident, always full of joy, looking forward. Yes, right? Like that kind of confidence. When I went into ministry, that's the way I thought it was always going to be. Like when I became a pastor, it was like undeserved privilege, confidence, joy, standing, moving forward. Yes. And then the next verse happens. The next verse says, we can rejoice too when can you say those two words with me? Run into, okay? When we run into problems and trials. For we know that they help us develop, what's the word? Endurance. And endurance develops strength of character, and character strengthens our confident hope of salvation. Here's what it says, okay? And this is just to make sure we get what we're reading. The undeserved privilege that God has given us is that He is going to allow us to run into difficult situations. And while there, He will kick our behind enough and sufficiently and regularly scheduled so that it produces an endurance in us that brings about confident hope. Am I right? Is that what He's saying? He's saying, I'm going to give you the privilege of running into things that you don't like and that hurt you and that are difficult, so that through that process of running the gauntlet with God, I will make you a better man or better woman, and because you're a better man or better woman, you will have more hope. That's what He's saying. I didn't read that part before going into ministry. He goes, and this hope will not lead to disappointment. I love this about Paul's writing in Romans. Like, as I read the letter, if I can imagine myself being in Rome, one of the Christians, reading this for the very first time, I have to admit, at the end of the last verse, I probably would have pushed the paper away and gone, that sounds horrible. I don't like that idea at all. I followed Jesus to go to heaven, not so that he would whip me into shape. I followed you, right? But then he goes, no, wait a second. And this will not lead to disappointment. He grabs you right back. You're not going to be disappointed with what you're sensing or dealing with. For we know how dearly God loves us because He has given us the Holy Spirit to fill our hearts with His love. When we were utterly helpless, Christ came at just the right time and died for sinners. So let me paint the picture of what we're being told here, just to be clear. Jesus finds us at a time when we are helpless and broken, right? Lost is our word in our culture. He finds us when we are helpless and broken. Jesus infuses in us spiritual life, new things, lots of grace, lots of mercy. We find forgiveness and a new potential. But then when He fills us with His Spirit, He sends us into a world that will cause us to face things that beat the heck out of us. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. So I love it when I'm praying with someone and they're like, I think I'm ready to follow Jesus so that my life will get easier. And I laugh at them. And I go, I laugh at them. I laugh with them. I want to clarify the whole gospel. I need to read verse 3, 4, 5, and 6, not just verse 2. You need to understand that yes, eternity is going to get easier for you. Heaven, golden streets, pearly gates, that's awesome. Much better than hell. Endless burning, lots of pain, lots of anguish. Yes, eternity is going to get easier, better, wonderful for you. But in this life, when I give myself to Jesus, I am asking Him to make me better. Which means that in order for Him to produce endurance, in order for Him to produce hope, in order for Him to do those things that this passage says He will do, I must go through trial and suffering. That's part of the gospel. That's what we sign up for when we say, Jesus, I want to go to heaven with you. I want you to give me hope. Does this make sense? I don't know if I'm the only imbecile who's ever followed Jesus not realizing that had anything to do with it. But I have to admit, in my spiritual life, this shocked me. This shocked me. I thought if I'm a Christian, God loves me, He's on my side, things get easier. Like I won't have illness, I won't have struggle, I won't have depression, I won't have fights in my relationships. Like that will go away because I'm a Christian now. I'm telling you, Brad Henson gave his life to Jesus at 6 or 7 years old, and that's what I thought I was getting into. An easier, simpler, better, in that sense, life. And then I became a pastor. It doesn't have anything to do with being a pastor, just a leader. I became a husband. I became a dad. All of a sudden, I became an adult, which means that friendships were not nearly as simple and struggles, and then all of a sudden it was my responsibility to pay bills, right? And then all of a sudden you got, a mortgage, and all of those kinds of things happen, and you start going, here's what we'll do. We start going, where is God in this? I thought this was going to be easy. I thought He was going to do it. And then you go, I have to really rethink what I'm facing. A lot of folks I know would experience in this moment, right between verses 3 and 4, where they've gone from great privilege, all of those things, right before they run into the calamity and the difficulty right there. When that moment happens, a lot of folks experience disappointment with God, which is our next slide. So I want to ask you this question. This is not one of those moments where I would ask someone to raise their hand. This is embarrassing to think I'm disappointed with God. I will confess to you, in my life, I have found myself disappointed with God a lot. Now, I should clarify, I wasn't really disappointed with God. I was disappointed that God didn't do what I thought God was going to do. What I was really disappointed with was that I was not God. Is that real and honest enough? Like, I was disappointed that I didn't get my way. That's what I thought I had prayed for my way. I thought I had asked for my way. I thought that God had maybe even told me I was going to get my way, and then I didn't get my way, and that made me disappointed with the fact that I wasn't God. That's really what is going on there, right? But I think this is real. This is genuine. This is honest, is that we find ourselves in this place. And it's in this moment where we go, you know what? This is not what I signed up for. This is not what I thought I was following God to do. This is not where I thought I was going. This is not what I wanted, right? It's in those moments that the verses we read earlier are a potential. I'm going to jump back up to the scripture verse in Romans 5, 3, and 4. It said, we can rejoice too when we run into problems and trials. Let me ask you a question here. Why do you think he had to tell them that they needed to rejoice when they did that? The reason is because they were not rejoicing, because they were mad about it. They were disappointed with God. They were upset. In fact, if you look at Scripture, you can see God followers disappointed with God over and over and over. It starts with Moses going, hey, God wants us to leave Egypt. And they go, Moses will follow you. And they follow Moses, and the Red Sea parts wide open, and they know it's God, and they walk right out of slavery, and all of those who have enslaved them die as the water crashes in on the Roman centurions, and they have this great high moment, I love God, and a month later they're going, I really liked it better in Egypt. I'm disappointed with God right now, right? The food was better over there than it is here. I didn't have to work as hard as a slave as I do as a free man. That's what they were saying. That's what they were saying. They were like, I'm disappointed with God. You see in the New Testament, lots of times when people go, yes, I will follow Jesus. Yes, I want to go to heaven for eternity. But then they find themselves, but I didn't want that to make my mom not love me anymore. I didn't want that to make my friends leave me alone. I didn't want that to make people ostracize me and pick on me and tease me. Or in the worst case scenario, I didn't want to be a martyr. I didn't want to have to die for this. Disappointment with God is real and has always been there as a reality, as a part of our faith. It's in those moments where we run into problems and trials, and it's not in the text, but I could add to that sickness and disappointment and broken relationships and jobs gone bad and loans defaulted on. Like when we find ourselves in things we did not expect or want. It's in those moments that we know that they help us produce endurance. And endurance develops strength of character. It's very interesting. So first, it means a hard thing makes us figure out how to go through a hard thing and keep going. That's endurance. And when you come to a hard thing and you keep going through a hard thing and you figure out how to go through hard things, then that builds your character. That's a plain way of saying that makes you a better man, a better woman. You're closer to God, right? And then when that happens, it says when you become a better man or a better woman, closer to God, that's when you get confident hope. That's when it happens. So think about this with me for just a second. This is super practical. Way back when we first ran into something, that's when we wanted the hope. Like, God, I've got to face this illness, and I have no hope. It's killing. I've got to face this broken marriage, this job I've just lost, this pain that I'm feeling, this disappointment in my heart. We want the hope then, but the hope doesn't come then. That's what it says. The hope comes after we move through it and let it build endurance in us, and after we have more endurance, which means we'll have to go through more than one bad thing. Like we go through a bad thing and then another disappointment and then another struggle. That's what molds us into a person that has stronger character. And it is a person who has stronger character who has hope. Does that make sense? This is not an easy reality, but it is a true one. The second question I had for us is what keeps our focus? I love in this passage that as he focuses forward, what he's ultimately thinking about is eternity with God. He's ultimately thinking about how wonderful it's going to be to spend eternity in heaven with God, where all calamity and difficulty and sickness and illness is gone. He doesn't keep his focus on, man, if I could get through this one problem. He keeps his focus on, wow, I'm going to get through all problems one day. And then the third thing is the big question that I have for us today, and this is really where I'm just going to land and hang for a moment, is ultimately this passage begs the question, are we willing to give up our comfort in order to build character? I was watching different videos this week trying to hear from other communicators of the word. I found this little bitty 8-minute Francis Chan sermon from 2008 or 2009. It was taken on a cheap little smartphone from somebody out in the crowd, and it's moving around. It's very bad video. Somehow it gets put on YouTube, and I got a chance to listen to it, and he wasn't even on this passage. He was a different passage, but he was talking about. He asked this question, and this question really, really convicted me. He said, if God allowed you to make a choice next year, this is 2013, let's think about 2014. If in all of 2014, you got to pick. You get to pick now, okay? 2014 can be one or the other. One is this. 2014 can be the year when you get a raise. You're going to make twice as much money doing what you already do. A huge raise. In 2014, your wife or husband is going to like you more than they do now. Like guys, like her cooking is going to get even better, right? And ladies, like his socks are never even going to be on the floor. They'll never even get there, right? And your kids are going to be more well behaved, right? And you're going to feel more appreciated. And people are going to say nice things to you more often in 2014. It's going to be an easy year, a restful year. It's going to be a vacation year. The whole year it's going to feel great. At the end of the year, though, the honest truth is you're not going to be any closer to Jesus than you were when you started the year. You're not going to have any stronger character. You're not going to have any stronger ultimate hope, but it's going to have been a wonderful experience. That's one option. What if the other option is, you know what, this year there are going to be some challenges. This year there are going to be some difficult times. This year you might deal with an illness. This year you might deal with a broken friendship. This year work might be harder and might pay less. Like this year you might find yourself alone more than you wish you were. This year you might get caught in a sin and everybody knows about it. Like this year you might be embarrassed. This year you might be challenged. This year might be tough. But the experiences through which you go this year will build stronger endurance in you, will build greater character in you, and you will get to know God like you've never known him before. Francis Chan looks at me through that little camera phone and says, pick a year. And most of us would pick the first one. A year where everything's easier, everything's simpler, everything's more relaxed, everything's better. This passage tells us that the Christian desires to run forward in life, to move forward in life. Sometimes that will mean experiencing victories. Sometimes that will mean experiencing defeats. But whatever it is that we run into, our greatest desire is not to have more comfort. Our greatest desire is to have more character. To build up in character, to become more like Christ. That's a beautiful thing. James 1, 2 through 4, which is another verse about a similar topic, says this: Dear brothers and sisters, when trouble comes your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. That is a beautiful, beautiful passage. I don't even know how to preach this without sounding like a weird ogre. Okay? I don't know how. I'm gonna step. I think the scriptures already sounded like a weird ogre. I was like, here's the thing. The honest truth. If you set in on a Christian prayer meeting, any prayer meeting, what does it sound like we want? It sounds like we want every sick person healed, every jobless person have a job, every hurting person helped, right? Does it sound like we want every person who has the potential to gain maturity mature? Every person who has the potential to gain endurance endurant? Does it sound like we want every person who's facing something horrible to face it with honor? Or do we simply pray that God takes it away? Do we simply pray that God get rid of it, that he not let them go through this? You see the difference? I know that sounds weird, like I'm a weird ogre. There's a part of me in my heart that I wish every sick person wasn't sick. I do. But that's going to be heaven when we get that. That's when we're going to get that. We get that in heaven. I wish every lonely person wasn't lonely. And if they're a Christ follower, we'll get that in heaven. That's when we'll get it. I wish every jobless person wasn't jobless. And guess what? In heaven, we won't even need a job. That's how wonderful it's going to be. But in the here and now, right now, the day we're facing, if I understand this passage correctly, what it says is that it is God that will use illness and brokenness and loneliness and fear. It is God who will use those things to make men and women more like Him. And so we should not run to those situations simply wishing that all the bad things would go away, but that we should run to those situations simply focused on going through them with Christ, so that in doing so we become more endurant. We become stronger in character. And we have genuine hope. What would it be like, Christians? What would it be like if as we get older, because of our experiences and time with God, we're so much more like Him? What would it be like if those who've been Christians the longest would also be those who have the strongest faith, the greatest hope, and the most endurance? Simply because we've gone through those things, we've experienced those difficulties, and we walked through them with Christ. And so we know what He'll do. We know when He'll be there. And because of those things, we have hope. That is a beautiful thing that we can experience in Christ. I'm going to read James 1, 2 through 4 again. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. I say this as a word of confession as I kind of finish up today. I'm not there. I'm closer to there than I used to be, but I'm a long way from there. That needing nothing part, that's really intimidating to me. Like needing nothing. You know what that needing nothing means? Like there's nothing in your life that you want that you don't have. Like there's nothing in life that you wish was true, it isn't true. There's nothing that motivates your decisions. There's nothing that you think about very often. There's nothing that keeps you goal-oriented toward getting that thing accomplished. You don't need that. Needing nothing. Another word for that is contentment. Genuine contentment. I take so much joy in the fact that I'm still young enough that maybe eventually I will learn that. I want to. I hope that at 45 I'm closer to that than I am at 39. And I hope at 52 I am much closer to that than I am today. And see what I'm saying? That's a true reality. But I know this, and this is intimidating. I, Brad Henson, will not become the man of James 1, 2 through 4, or of Romans 5, 2 through 6. I will not become that man who needs nothing, that man who has confident hope. I or you will not become that person who gets to have great faith and great character and knows Jesus and is close to him. I will not get to have that without going through horrible things that Jesus doesn't save me from experiencing. But he lets me go through them. And he goes through them with me. And he stays when everybody else leaves. And he's there when you don't know how to talk to anybody else. And he gives you hope when nothing else gives you hope. And he brings you joy when nothing else brings you joy. And when things seem rough, difficult, horrible, bad, he is there. And he is beautiful, wonderful, strong, caring, gracious, true. That is how Christians grow. That is how we mature. The honest truth is, my maturity will not necessarily be stronger because I went to Sunday school more often than somebody else, or even, believe it or not, because I heard more sermons or went to church more often than somebody else. The thing the Scripture says that will ultimately result in my growth in Christ is that I faced difficult things. I ran into calamity and I kept going and became endurant and followed Jesus, and he built my character, and I kept going and I kept moving forward, and it got hard again and I kept going and I continued endurance. And then in those experiences he builds in you and in me what the Scripture calls confident hope. Potter's House Church, let's go there. Let's pray together.